Hi, and welcome to part one of our series on overcoming healthcare burnout, brought to you by Hawaii Nurse Coaches. I am Amy Havenstreit, and with me today is Britt Harris. We are registered nurses as well as certified nurse coaches who have a passion for supporting those who work in healthcare. Again, my name is Amy. I have worked in healthcare for over 26 years, first as an EMT, then as an ER tech, then an ER nurse. I've also worked in the recovery room or the PACU. I've been house supervisor and also a manager in the ICU. I have an MBA in healthcare administration and a doctorate in nursing leadership. I am also board certified in nurse coaching. Britt, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
You're always a hard act to follow, Amy. But yes, I'm Britt Harris. I am a registered nurse since 2010. And I've worked in the emergency department setting for 13 of the last 16 years. I've also worked a little bit in transfer center as well as home infusion for some kids with hemophilia. But primarily, I'm an ER nurse and I am also a board certified nurse coach that works with Hawaii Nurse Coaches. And I absolutely love supporting other healthcare workers and especially talking about burnout specifically. So really, really excited to be here with you all today.
Thanks, Britt. Today in part one, Britt is going to talk about actually defining what burnout is, the incidence of burnout, the impacts of burnout, which are many, and who is at risk. And I am going to talk about a holistic approach to overcoming burnout, and as well as rediscovering your values and purpose.
All right, let's get started. So I do feel like burnout is a term that we use really loosely and generally, and so I just want to start by kind of defining it. And I get a lot of what I'm going to talk about today from the book that is called Battling Healthcare Burnout by Dr. Tom Mayer. He is an MD, he is an emergency room physician, and has written a really, really comprehensive and thorough book about this subject, as well as there's a lot of organizational suggestions in it, tons of data. It's a great, great book. So I really like his definition. And so that's where we're going to get started today. Thanks for showing that, Amy. Yeah, I highly recommend every single person that works in healthcare read this book, but especially if you're in management or leadership. So, okay, so let's get started. What is it? So burnout is when job stressors are greater than our adaptive capacity to deal with those stressors. Okay, so job stressors, adaptive capacity, right? The job stressors are greater than our adaptive capacity, burnout's going to occur. And what it is it's basically a set of symptoms. It's a syndrome. And the symptoms are depersonalization or cynicism, emotional exhaustion, and a loss of meaning at work. So again, I'm just going to repeat those real quick. Emotional exhaustion is the first symptom, cynicism or depersonalization, and a loss of meaning at work. And that definition comes from that book that we just showed there. And I really want to just get into how big of a problem this is. Okay, there's so much good data out there, especially even from this year. And it's really, really distressing, actually. And so I think many of us who work in healthcare, we sense it, we maybe feel it in our spirit, almost like this kind of this depersonalization or this emotional exhaustion we sense either in ourselves or in our peers, our colleagues. One of the first ones I want to talk about, I'm going to talk about a little bit as far as nurses, and then we'll shift to physicians. But magnet hospitals, as many of us know, are supposed to be centers of excellence as far as nursing is concerned. And so they did a massive study, about 11,000 nurses, and I think about 1,500 of them were emergency department nurses specifically, all from 60 magnet hospitals across the US. And this was actually came out in the emergency Nurses Journal from January this year, but basically showed about 54% of ER nurses are experiencing high burnout, and that percentage is only a little bit lower in inpatient nurses, about 50. And half of emergency department nurses had intent to leave their job, and that's only a little bit lower in inpatient nurses, 42%. A lot of 36 to 43% of nurses were rating their work environment as fair or poor, and the majority of nurses said that there were not enough nurses to care for patients. And we hear that, we hear that from many different places as far as nurses saying we don't have enough of us to do the work, right? That our workloads are too great. We don't have enough staff is a huge problem that we hear all the time. And they actually took recommendations in this study from these nurses who are experiencing high burnout, like, how do we fix this? And 91% said, we just need more staff. We need more of us to do the work, right? And then 86% said we need to be able to take our breaks without interruption. So, pretty simple, straightforward recommendations for ways to decrease burnout in these places. But yeah, that data was pretty shocking for such a large study, right? That over half of nurses are experiencing burnout. And then let's talk about doctors. So I'll start with emergency department physicians first. There's some specific data for them. The Canadian Journal of Emergency Medicine had a study come out this year that actually was 60 to 86% of ED physicians experiencing burnout. Medscape 2024 Physician Burnout and Depression Report. I highly recommend taking a look at that if you have access to it. That one showed 63% of emergency medicine physicians scoring high in burnout. So, greater than half. And then as far as the Medscape report, if you're kind of looking at all comers, all physicians, different specialties, 30 to 40% of doctors were saying that they'll leave their practice in the next 2 years. As many of you probably know, we already have a pretty...
Sorry, Britt, was that all doctors or just emergency room physicians?
Yeah, so that's across all specialties.
Yeah,
30 to 40% saying they'll leave their practice in the next 2 years.
Oh my.
And that's a big problem when we actually are already short tens of thousands of doctors, and that problem is getting worse. So, it's very, these numbers are really concerning. And then I think you might have introduced me to this data, Amy, but there was a 2020 American Nurses Association survey where the younger nurses under the age of 25, the burnout rate was actually higher, like 62 to 69%. So anyway, we know it's a big problem, right? Kind of anywhere you look, it's about half, maybe more. And so it's a big issue. And what's the impact? I think that this is really important for people to understand. There's multiple impacts that we should care about here. And Dr. Tom Mayer, in his book, he would say that the number one impact we should care about is the fact that people are suffering. And when he says people are suffering, he's talking about the healthcare workers. Okay, so regardless of money and all the other things that are impacted, the most important thing is that people are suffering. People that went into healthcare, people who care, are experiencing a lot of emotional distress and just a lot of symptoms of burnout, and that decreases our ability to experience joy in our lives and things like that. And so that actually in and of itself should be a reason that we really care about, healthcare workers are suffering. We should care about that. But besides that, all of the ways that we measure progress and quality in healthcare, all of those things decrease when burnout is present. Okay. So there's actually a scale for burnout. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later, but Christina Maslach is a psychologist who defined burnout, and she has a scale to measure burnout. And so they use that in a lot of healthcare systems. The healthcare systems purchase this survey and they utilize it. And where burnout is higher, patient care suffers, right? There's more failure to act in emergencies, failure to rescue rates go up, adverse events go up, patient quality of care goes down, their experience goes down. So basically everything we use to measure the quality of healthcare decreases when high burnout levels are present in the staff. And so we should care very much. Not only are the healthcare workers suffering, but patients are suffering because of burnout as well. And you might even be able to think of a circumstance yourself if you've received healthcare recently, or you have a loved one that receives healthcare. You might even be able to just think immediately of a time where you knew that the doctor or nurse that was caring for you was totally burnout, and you suffered or your family member suffered. And then let's talk about kind of the financial impact. And I will not get into this because there's so much, there's a lot of numbers, and I don't want to bore you guys to death, but it's massive. Hospitals are spending millions of dollars a year in turnover, in recruitment, in replacing physicians and nurses and other healthcare workers. Actually, there's a couple, I found this really fascinating. So Wellstar Health System in Atlanta, they've shown that the actual cost to the organization of the turnover of one doctor exceeds $500,000 and is likely closer to $1 million. Wow. Atrius Health reports that the cost to replace a physician is $1 million to $500,000. Other studies indicate that it costs 2 to 3 times a physician's annual salary to replace them. And the cost of turnover among RNs has been estimated to be 1.2 to 1.5 times their annual salary.
Wow.
So some hospitals have a 100% turnover rate every 5 years. So millions of dollars are being hemorrhaged by these healthcare systems because of burnout, right? If people are not getting burnout, they're much less likely to leave. Many people, if not the majority, are leaving their jobs because of some form of burnout that they're experiencing. And so tons of money. And so hospitals need to be investing in reducing burnout in their staff. Like it's a slam dunk return on investment. And so I
And
won't get into all that because
yeah, let me ask you, and are they making that investment in their staff?
yeah, so some places are. Actually, there's some big health systems on the mainland that are really leading the way in this, and other healthcare systems are kind of behind the times. But I think we're going to have to see that change. I think it's inevitable that hospitals invest more in this because they can't afford not to. Yeah.
So, in this part one, I want to help you understand what holistic health means. And then also we're going to talk a little bit about values and reconnecting to our purpose in healthcare. So first, I just want to take a minute to go over deep breathing and why we do it. Okay, so it sounds obvious, just take a deep breath, right? But there is actual evidence to show that diaphragmatic breathing reduces cortisol levels and encourages the parasympathetic response. So as you know, that means a decrease in heart rate, a decrease in blood pressure, and we can do it anywhere, anytime. So let's just close your eyes or not. Take a minute to breathe from the diaphragm. That's in your belly. So start by drawing in the diaphragm downward into the abdominal cavity. And stress release will occur during slow, full, deep breaths from your abdomen. So let's practice 3 deep breaths. So on the inhale, feel that belly expand and then fill up your lungs completely. Now on the exhale, blow out your mouth, release the chest and the belly. So again, in your nose, fill up the belly and the lungs, blow it out. And imagine blowing out all that stress out of your body. Relax your shoulders, relax your neck. Good. I want to share, first of all, this is my own nursing burnout scale. Britt was talking a little bit about a different burnout scale, and this is mine. We love scales in healthcare, pain scale, so many scales. So I thought that this was a funny representation of what the nursing burnout scale might look like when we start. This can even change during our shift, right? We might start at a 0 at the beginning of the shift and fluctuate between 10 and back down and back up again. This also can be throughout our careers. We're very excited when we're new sometimes to go to work. And then after a period of time, after maybe negative things are happening at work, we're not so excited to be a nurse anymore. And that's a shame. So the underlying foundation of holistic health is based on the idea that humans are fully integrated beings, mind, body, and spirit, emotion, environmental, and social and cultural differences, right? So we're made up of many parts, not just a body. So the philosophy is that the mind, body, and spirit work in conjunction with each other to facilitate the whole system that forms a person. So since every human is made up of interdependent parts, if one part is out of balance, then the overall health of that person is affected. So this is my wheel, and in the center is fun. I put fun because for me, fun is what makes life worth living, and I'm always searching out ways to make things I do more fun. Having fun is a spiritual boost for me. I do physical activities that are fun, so I keep doing them. And I always feel more balanced and refreshed after lots of laughter and having fun. So, excuse me. So, our focus in healing is to include mind, body, spirit. That's the inner circle. And then in the outer circle is the 8 dimensions of holistic health. So, as you can see, we've got the occupational, intellectual, financial, spiritual, emotional, social, environmental, and of course, physical. We're going to touch on a few of these throughout the multi-part series. And today I want to start with the spirit. In my opinion, spirituality is the aspect of humanity and wellness that's the most neglected when delivering modern day healthcare. We've all had patients that we know are suffering in their spirit and their mind, and it's affecting their bodies. And that happens to us too. So when I refer to spirituality, I speak of a general, personalized, and natural occurrence where a person seeks connectedness between him or herself and some sort of higher power or purpose. Spirituality can be defined in terms of a search for universal truth and meaning in the world. So spirituality is related to our core values, who you are and what you stand for. And it's how we investigate our purpose for being. Why are we here? Who are you? I'm not talking about your job or your role, like wife, husband, mother, father. And I'm also not talking about your body, what your gender is, what you look like. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the essence of who you are. What kind of a person are you? And how do you show it? How do you live it? So, take a few minutes. You can pause the video if you want. Take a few minutes to write down a few of these that really resonate with you. And what are the ideals you strive for? Why are you in healthcare? What do you value the most? What brings you joy? So I will share my top 5 at the moment. Sometimes they change. My top 5 are integrity, freedom, truth, equanimity, and joy. Britt, would you like to share yours?
Yeah, sure. Actually, it's funny. I used to have them on a post-it right here next to me, and I don't have it in front of me right now.
That's okay.
But yeah, Amy, I love this so much. This is one of my favorite pieces that we talk about. And one of the questions that I think it might have come from our training in nurse coaching, but that I really liked, and it sometimes puts things in perspective for me, and that is when we think about our values, think about like if I lost this part of myself, or if I didn't have this value anymore, I wouldn't feel like me. I wouldn't be me anymore. Like these are so integral to who I am that I can't change outside. I can't abandon these values. And so I feel like I don't, like I said, I don't have my post-it in front of me, but the ones that come to mind for me are love, compassion. And for me, compassion, I feel like there's a little caveat, which is alleviating suffering. Like that is a really important piece of the compassion value for me. And also family, adventure, and peace. So those are some of the main ones that come up for me.
Right. Exactly. Well, thank you for sharing. Again, I said sometimes these change according to where you are in your journey of life. I'm going to change the slide again. I'm using Calm's slide. And this is Ikigai. It's a Japanese concept that refers to your reason for being or what gives life meaning, value, or purpose to you. So everybody is different, obviously. Staying connected with our purpose throughout our lifetime has definitely been shown to increase longevity and health. So we don't have to dive too deep into the slide. You can see it for yourself, but it illustrates that the Ikigai lies at the intersection of the 4 elements that we want to consider. So what you love, what you're good at. Okay, many of us consider to be good nurses. What the world needs, the world definitely needs healthcare workers, and then what you can get paid for.
Yeah.
A nurse's ikigai might be to help others heal and alleviate suffering, right? So what is your purpose? So finding your purpose, finding this statement that encompasses you and why you get out of bed every morning might take a lot of thought and reflection. And so I want you to think about this, you know, over the next couple of days, and come up with your own ikigai or purpose. And that is beginning to help us to understand how our values, for Britt, it's compassion or relieving suffering, how that value, what's most important to you, aligns with the work that you do. And if sometimes, as we go through our careers, we lose sight of that. Why am I a nurse in the first place? Why did I get into this?